morning, guys. I really appreciate having you guys on board. I'm sorry for last week. The network one disgraced me. So, but this week is better. I'm in a better place now with a better network. So, this topic is tips and secrets to your younger self, things you got to realize later on in your career that if you are new, if somebody have directed you, or if you are aware of when you started, you might have achieved a more profitable, a smoother, and a more productive career. Irrespective, our experience is what has shaped us so far, but tips and secrets that you've acquired so far. So I'll start with Mr. Emmanuel. You have the floor now.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yes, yeah, morning. So for my own experience, I would say the journey to becoming a senior software engineer was not all rosy because it comes with its own, what is it called, challenges, right? When I started off my professional career as a software engineer in 2015, March precisely, where I was focused more on working on the back end stuff, building web services and all of that. At that point in time, I was kind of struggling to understand the concept of web service, right? Simply because um, I was coming from, I just came out of school, and by the time you're just coming out of school, what you learned in school is quite different from what is obtainable, in the real world, right? So it was kind of fascinating, and at the same time, it looks kind of challenging, right? Because I had to do some series of learning and also learning new things because since I could Java, I was used to doing things the traditional way using EJB and the rest of that. So I was kind of struggling at first to understand the newer concept. To keep up with the new concepts that have been in town. And it got to a point in time, I said, okay, let me even just take my time, right? And then try to do some studying. Let me see what exactly I missed out, right? Then I realized that the frameworks that are available for Java engineers, right? They've been in existence since like 2003. That is for Spring. But then I never heard of it up until like 2015, right? When I started working professionally. So if I had that opportunity, to hear about this framework back then when I was in school, and even when I was doing my internship, of course, I'll not be in Nigeria again, right? Because it means that by now I should be chilling with the guys in Microsoft or probably like Google and the likes, right? Because they work with these technologies on daily basis. It's something that they've been doing. I was just getting to find out about them in 2015. So if I had known that things like this existed, it should have helped my career. Because let me just give you a practical example, right? Now, when I started working with Africa Prudential in 2015, I had this friend, right, who was at that same year just going into programming, right? He went to Decagon and he learned, he went to Decagon and then he did this programming course like bootcamp for 6 months. And then the guy came out and he had he had so many experience, like all these things that I started learning in 2015 then. At the time the guy finished the program, they become things that he was so comfortable with that he could work with. And guess what? The guy landed job with MTN in like 2016. And if I started earning like probably like times three of what I was earning back then. Because he knows the current technology, right? So he just went into it and there was high demand for it. And so it was opportune and started working at MTN. Yeah, this is just an example out of so many, right? But if I had known, right, I did I had somebody that would have probably been mentoring me, right? It should have been a whole lot more easier because mentorship is actually really, really good. Although I had mentors when I was back in school because I learned programming through mentorship program as well. But of course, the place where I learned it from, it's like a one-man kind of business where they are not really doing research, they are not keeping up with current trend. It's just a particular pattern of coding approach. So if you go into that kind of place, it's when you get to Rome, you do what the Romans do, basically, right? So you follow their pattern. So I was basically following their own pattern. Back then, they were building like monolithic application, right? Where you have your, what's it called? You have your Java, there's this technology in Java called JSP, Java Server Pages, right? Where you embed, so if you can use it for front-end application too, where you embed, what is it called? HTML code and your CSS and the likes into it, and then it gives you a web page. So that is what they were used to. I mean, that is what they used there. I mean, so I was used to it. So when I now came into the financial industry, I mean, the workplace, I was not hearing separation of concern. I was like, what is all this? What kind of problem is this? Before time I heard of SOAP web services, the team was giving me serious, I mean, it was giving me serious headache. I was like, which one is SOAP again now? Guys, you know, just to design page and then let me just design page and just fire call. The team will work. Because then I mean, I was coding PHP too, the same approach, monolithic. You embed HTML code inside the PHP tag. I mean, it was kind of weird though. But when I now started, I mean, I now came into the what's it called, like the real world, and then start seeing how things are done. I was like, wow. So these guys have been wasting my time. Although it's not a waste of time, but to me, I feel like, man, if I had known all of these things since, because come to think of it now, there are guys that are really, really, I mean, they are in school now, but you can say they are on intermediate level because programming is no longer difficult the way it used to be again. Although I'm speaking from my own background as a Java engineer, right? As a backend engineer. Back then, when I was learning programming, Java was tough because I know how many of my colleagues that dropped down and said, man, I cannot do this. I can't do this Java thing. This thing is really, really, I mean, it's really, the stress is just too much that they say, man, I can't do it. They had to stop along the way. And I said, okay, no problem. So for me, I would really say what helps me, right, and shapes me into the engineer that I dreamt of and which I am now is, I would say, that constant urge for knowledge, right? Right. So I mean, I really wanted to like know what is it called, the things that are obtainable. So I started the process of incremental learning, right? So when I started, my boss just told me, he said, look, the way you used to write code is no longer how you'll be writing going forward. Your job is strictly you are writing web services. So when he told me your job is to write web services, I'm like, oh, okay, I mean, I'll not be doing HTML and CSS again. He said, no, there is separation of concern here. So there is the guys that are doing the front end side. There is the guys that are doing the middleware, which I was part of. And then we also had a database team, separate, right? I had no business with database at all. I mean, it was just separation of concern, right? And at first, it felt really good, right? Because it means less opportunity. I mean, it means less job for me. But at the same time, I come to think of it, in advanced countries, they like hiring rounded engineers. So when you talk about a rounded engineer, you're talking about someone who does front end, who does back end, and at the same time, is well grounded with database, I mean, DevOps and all of that, right? So I said, well, somehow it's a disadvantage to me. But let me just be good at the part I was told to handle, right? That was the first thing that came into my mind. So I started doing a whole lot of research, right? And I was consistent at it. I was doing incremental learning. So I'll just look at, okay, what are the various, I mean, frameworks that are available in Java? I'll pick one. I'll start learning it. I mean, even if it means doing like 30 minutes a day, I was just consistent with it. I gave myself targets. I will set my alarm to ring at to ring 11:30 on a daily basis. So once it's 11:30, whatever I'm doing, I'll have to pause and take, even if it is a 30 minutes break, to just do some research. And at the end of the month, guess what? I found out that when I looked at when I reflected on all the things that I've learned in the past, it was like, wow. I mean, I was kind of ready to take on any type of interview that was coming because I was virtually touching on almost all the areas that I should have known. I mean, way back that I didn't have the opportunity to know, right? So I just said, okay, let me do that learning. So the incremental learning is one of it, right? And then the other one that really stood out for me, that worked very well for me, is always going back to revisit what my senior colleagues has done, right? So if my boss writes code, right, sometimes he will just write the code, right? I mean, when I look at it, I mean, by the time I start looking at the code, it will seem kind of bogus and confusing. But then I'll now take my time. And back then, there were no AI, right? That I'm talking about this time is before the advent of AI. There was no AI. So the only tool I was using back then was Stack Overflow. So when I try to understand the code and it's not making much meaning, right, what I'll do is I'll just take that entire code snippet and I'll go to Stack Overflow and I'll put it there. And I'll say, please, can somebody break this code down for me, right? And then because my boss then, my first boss, I was scared of going to ask the guy question at times because it got to a point if I asked the guy certain question, he would tell me this is not NIT, man. You need to learn, you need to Google, go and use Google, check the internet. So those were the kind of responses I would get from him. So at some point in time, I would feel like, oh no, I shouldn't be going to this guy because I don't want to be embarrassed. But guess what? Embarrassment, if you want to grow, you won't mind all these things, right? Because there was a point in time when I was in school, like I needed to complete a project. I was going I had to, there was a guy that was helping me out then. I was doing it, but that was my first time of doing biometric because my final year project was biometric security, electronic examination using biometric security. So the guy that was putting me through the biometric part, his house was very far away from mine. But I just had to take that. I had to take the pain and the stress to be going to his house so that he would put me through. So I never bothered. I was going that length just to make sure that I get what I want from him. And guess what? When you are learning from somebody, right, always do what they say because this really helps. This really helps me a lot, right? Back then, I had this mentor where if I have a task that I wanted to work on, he would tell me, Emmanuel, tell me how you want to implement this task. These are the requirements. Tell me the steps they are going to take to get this task completed from the first parts, down to the final stage, right? So, and I was like, okay, I'll look through it based on my own understanding. I'll now break it down and tell him these are the steps that I'm going to do. Now, when he looks at it and notices that there is something odd about the way I've said I'm going to do it, he would advise me and say, no, at this point, do this, do that. But then his own advice would now be somehow difficult for me to implement. So along the line, at times I'll now go ahead and do it the way I feel I can achieve it best, right? So when he looks at it, he won't say anything. He will just tell me you are done. If he looks at it and he sees what I've done, he will tell me, go and deploy, right? He will give me the guide to deploy. And what he was trying to do to me back then is that he wanted me to learn by what's it called? By action. Let me put it that way. Because if he allows me to go and deploy it and he starts failing along the line, he will now tell me this is the reason why this thing is failing. If you've gone the route I told you, this problem wouldn't have occurred. So that happened to me like 3-4 times, and then I learned my lesson, right? So I made sure that at any point in time, I always stick to his advice. Once he tells me, do this, because then I was still learning until now I became very comfortable to decide things for my own self. And I said, okay, at this point, I think I'm better off doing these things my own way. So if that helps me and really shapes my idea when it comes to system design, right? You cannot just come to me and tell me you want to do something. I'll ask you why. Because there must be a reason behind every code. Behind every line of code that you write. So when you tell me that you want to write it this way, I'll say no. So that really helps me. And even when I work with guys that are way, way junior, I also use the same approach for them. I first of all ask, tell me how you feel these things can be achieved. So when I listen to you, if you are going the right direction, I'll definitely know. If you are off, I'll definitely know. So in order for us to save ourselves the stress and the time, I will tell you this thing you are doing is not going to fly. And these are the reasons. I'll lay down the reasons for you and tell you these are the reasons why this is not really going to work. So the mentorship program, I would say, really helps me, right? Coupled with the fact that I was always in search of, learning new things. I'm open-minded, right? I don't mind, even if I see a junior that knows what he's doing, I don't mind going to meet that junior and say, look, I want to learn this thing from you. That is what really stood out for me. I don't care whether you are older than me, whether you are more experienced than, whether you are older than me or you just came into the field. So long as you know what you are doing and you can prove to me beyond every reasonable doubt that yes, that you are good at what you do, I don't care. I will just go all out and try to learn from you. I don't belittle anybody, right? Another thing again is that I like, so sometimes, right, the kind of bosses that you work with also, right? Now, this is where, of course, we have good bosses and we have bad bosses, right? So sometimes you might be working with somebody that is very, very good. I mean, the person is a good engineer, but a bad manager, right? And sometimes they will throw words at you that will sound kind of discouraging. But I tell you, if you are a junior and you have this bigger picture in mind that, oh, you know where you are going to, just ignore those kind of comments, because there are things that will want to distract you, right? And you'll be thinking, oh, am I sure this thing is really for me? Do I want to be facing this insult from this guy? If your answer to the question, do you want to really go far? I mean, to becoming a good software engineer. If your answer is yes to this question, I tell you, you won't mind those comments, right? You will just use. I mean, there is this tactics that I usually use. It's one of the 48 laws of power, which says that use surrender tactics to transform weakness into strength, right? At those points where you are still kind of struggling to understand certain things and your boss is throwing words and unpleasant comment at you, just surrender. I mean, you have nothing to lose. The insults will not take anything away from you. Just don't care about it. Just absorb it, because it is. I mean, that particular point in time is a phase, and that phase will definitely pass. I mean, it will definitely come to pass, right? And after that time, by the time you now get to a more comfortable stage, you can now say, "Oh, I can challenge this my boss now," right? Even when they tell you about to do this, and you feel that your own way is better, at that point you can now tell them, "Oh, why don't you? I think if you do it this way, it's going to be better." But you don't do it rudely, right? You do it with respect. I mean, you don't just say, "Oh," you don't just start raising your shoulders high. You do it with respect and tell them, "I feel this thing can be better done this way, using this approach." And if your boss is someone that has listening ear, of course, he will give you listening ear. And at the end of the day, he might say, "Oh, okay, I think you have a point there," and he will go with you. Because I've also worked with such a boss, right? Who feels that that his own opinion is always the best, right? But sometimes I will tell him, no, you cannot always win, and you can't always win. Sometimes let's try to look at things from other people's perspective. He was doing this up until it got to a point so bad that I said, no, I will not take this thing again. But I had to go and report him. So then I said, okay, hand over an application to this guy. Let's see. Let him prove us wrong. And from there, man, I was able to handle it perfectly. That was when he knew that, that is why he had been giving himself so much stress. It's because this guy was trying to limit this guy. I was scared that if I leave him on his own, it's going to mess up the entire thing. But guess what? When he allowed me handle more, he wasn't micromanaging me anymore. He too, he started relaxing. Because if you train somebody up to a stage, right, it means that you can hand over your own responsibility to them without any fear that they are going to cause a mess. But when you as a boss, you are feeling, I'm doubting this guy's opportunity. I mean, you're not giving the guys that are under you or the juniors that room to learn. I mean, it might be against them, but at the same time, it's also going to work against you, right? Because it means you have to shoulder more responsibility. If you're that kind of boss, you cannot go on leave because you'll be scared that, everything revolves around you. If you want to go on leave, you'll be scared. Even management too will not allow you to go on leave. So, with the level I've come to now, I just take my time. If I have guys that I'm working with, I always try to share my own experiences with them and tell them, look, I cannot come and kill myself, right? I will train them just to make sure that I put them through in every area. So another thing again that really worked for me was that I always try hard, right, to always look at the newer technologies, right, at every point in time, and try them out, right? Even if I'm not changing our current system, because there is always updates. Updates are coming out. I try them on the side, I try to prepare in earnest in case my boss now comes and say, "Oh, let's switch to this technology." I know I'm 2 steps ahead of him already, so I don't wait till he comes and say, "Oh, we need to start looking at this. You need to start looking at this framework now," and that will not be the time where I'll not start looking at it. So those are some of the things that I did, and has really, really, really helped me, which I'm really also grateful for. So this is just the little experience that I've had in the past. That's what I would like to share with guys out there.
Right. right. Thank you. So, my name is Izu. I am not the engineer typical person. I'm from the business side. I have been a business consultant for the past couple of years, over close to a decade now. But I'm going to just share. I'm going to share part of my story, and then what I would have advised my younger self. So my journey started pretty much like anyone, a lot of people, a lot of Nigerians out there where they don't even know what they need to do after school, right? Pretty much anything that comes, you just want to probably get on it, or the next thing that is boxing. But the one thing that I would have advised my younger self is have a tribe, right? Have a community of people that are, I'm always big on people, right? People before skill sets. I always say the who matter than the how. If you know the who, if you have who's in your circles, it doesn't matter the how, you will always get along. You will always be better. You'll be a better version of yourself. You'll be better at your job. You just need the right set of people in your circle. So the one thing I would say is have the right circle of friends, have the right circle of people, have the right circle of community. And how that tied to my story is I left after school. I relocated. Work relocated me to pretty much a different geography that I have nobody, have no friends, knew nobody, pretty much. And then I started building new circle of friends. And that shift alone of geography and having new circles of friends from where I was coming from, literally is one of the game changer for me. And I will put it out there to anybody that there is always a fight between nature and nurture for anybody. There is the nature that, oh, these are the gifts and the talents you were born with. And there is the nurture on the environment and the kind of people that raised you. And it has been proven by psychologists that nurture will always eat nature for breakfast. So some people are born with gift or talent that, oh, you are a gifted flute player, or you're a gifted footballer, you play football, like you have the gift of playing football in you. But if you don't grow in the right environment and with the right circle of people that are harnessing and helping improve that skill set, even though you were born with that talent, inbuilt skill or abilities, you will struggle at a very fundamental level. Your struggle might not be very obvious because you have the skill set. So I always say that nurture over supersede nature. So having the right environment. So me shifting from where I was raised, born, to a new environment because of job was a game changer. And why I would say the game changer is because going back to where I came from, seeing my peers that I grew up with, I could see a stark difference in the way we think, the way we act, the way we behave. The faculty of our thinking is way off. And I will accredit that first to the tribe the new tribe I built. That's one thing. So I will always say, I want to advise myself, and I will tell anybody that's starting is prioritize your circle, prioritize the people, prioritize the tribe, prioritize geography. I hear people say that, oh, where you are doesn't matter. You can be anywhere you are and thrive. To a large extent, it's true, but there is a cap to the level of thrive you will have. You can't be born in some certain environment and you will. The rate of you thriving and succeeding is capped. There are going to be few people that would defy the odd, but that is not the norm. People sometimes would generalize the exception for the norm, and that's the problem. If you were born in an environment, if you were born in the 17th century or the 18th century, no matter how intelligent you are, you can't know what AI is. No matter how passionate and how determined you are, you can't. You were born in the wrong era. And if you were born and you grew up in a village where you don't have internet, no matter how determined and how intelligent you are, you can't be saying you're a programmer or you are a developer. You can't, because it is beyond the scope of your geography. I believe geography is very important. The geography title, there are three critical things that form geography: people, places, and moments. You have to have the right people. You have to be in the right moment. you have to be in the right environment. People, places, and moments. People, places, and moments. These are 3 factors I would say for anybody that is starting their journey. Please prioritize. I will not prioritize skill sets over that. I will prioritize that over skill sets. Now, the next thing is, after that, the next thing I will advise my younger self is be confident. The word favor the bold and the confident. The word generally, and I can give tons of examples that we all can recognize. Is, you can see, I'm going to call some names, and because this is going to go probably, David is going to post this thing on YouTube. I'm going to pretty much not call the names, but I'm going to give examples that you can get a hint of what I'm referring to. There are some people, or there is a person that probably sing music. At some point, I came from the zoo. I don't know the level of exposure or thing that kind of person, but the confidence alone, he has attraction is based on confidence. You can attract a large audience when you are bold. You can be bold in ignorance, but just be bold. Be bold and come out and speak. Be bold and express your values, even though they are off. I believe boldness is not a vice, or is not a vice, is not a virtue. It is more of a virtue than a vice, sorry. It's more of a virtue than a vice, because the word favors and recognizes the bold. Now, the first thing is your environment, that is nurture. The next thing is being bold. Then that's where I want to say skill set coming. Now, I know a lot of people want to go for skill set. Look for what you're passionate about, get it, or look for what pays the most, get it. But speaking about boldness, let me just add this. One of the things that make most teenagers or people coming up, my younger self, that I would have probably my younger self, is don't be afraid of being wrong or being a failure. And I put it to myself that failure is an impossible articulation. Failure in itself, that word failure, is an impossible articulation. There is nothing like failure. A person cannot be a failure, because failure in itself is a noun, and a noun is the name of a person, animal, place, or thing. That means it cannot change. The name of a noun, if you call something a noun, that thing cannot change. A phone is always going to be a phone for the next 10 years. So if you are a failure by definition, if somebody is a failure, that person can never succeed again. But failure is not possible because you cannot fail, right? Everybody transcend. You can be failing, but you cannot be a failure. And the last thing I would say is go for knowledge, go for the skill set, which is a third thing I would have myself. Go for the skill set, meet the right people, sign up for classes. And I want to say this, let me wrap up with this. I know my time is up. Let me wrap up with this. There are 4 ways to learn, and I think a lot of people, we focus more on just one area and negate the other 3. There are 4 ways to learn. Some people do a mixture of all of them without knowing, but this is a structured way to better increase your skill set. The first is determine what you want to learn and get the knowledge. Take courses, take program. That's courses. The next thing is have a community of people that are learning in the same journey with you, because it's easier to go with people than to go alone. It is boring, and it's weary when you are trying something and you're not getting it. You need a community of people that are in the same journey and in the same phase of learning with you, that can guide and direct the path. And the last thing is you have to practice. You have to do that which you are learning. You can't just be learning knowledge. A professor that has all the knowledge but have not actually done the work is no better off than it is worse than a child that has actually practiced and have done the work than someone that just have head knowledge. Because sometimes head knowledge is romancing. It can tease the brain, but you actually need to actually put your hands to the plow. So those are the things I would tell my younger self. Thank you.
Remain editing to my time, right? Okay, so I already have some things jotted down, so I shouldn't take more than that. Okay, so for me, I would say, let me start with tips that got me here first. Then I would now say things when I reflected back on my journey, and then tips that would have gotten me further than where I'm currently at. I would say skills that got me here was more of nature, the natural inquisitive of asking questions, um, the natural instinct of saying, "Oh, I feel like there's a 1,000 way to killing a dog. It's not necessarily by hanging the dog. There are ways to kill a dog in a subtle way, and then you still enjoy your dog meal rather than shooting it or hanging it." And then it started with me saying, "Oh, I was working as a tech support, right?" And then I started asking questions more than I should. Questions like, no, wait, if you are building this application, that's what they want you to build, but how would the user understand it? Aside radio jingle and all of that, the marketers will go to the field and tell users what to do. And then when the marketers leave the user, how would the user remember things? Like those are the questions I was asking. I remember then I was working on a USSD project and I was like, wait, how would me that I don't have a smartphone know that I can transfer money with my GPS phone? That's what I asked. And they're like, just that. No, you have to explain to me. I'm a user and I don't understand. Explain to me. It started with that. And then I think my curiosity and my question asking got me to a reasonable state of learning and then changing career paths from a tech support. And I did a bit of database administration and then moved to a bit into networking, which I really don't like to talk about because I was terrible at that. And then I finally landed QA role. And then another thing that got me was like every other speaker had spoken and then said, there's nothing like a wrong question. There's nothing like a silly, stupid question. I remember then I had a line manager who was very, very listening. And then he's more like the the man of the people, right? People like him. He has a way of getting you along. And then he got to a stage where said, I've never felt terrible in my life that the way Fumi asks questions. Fumi will literally ask you, why is the sky blue? And then everybody was laughing. But yeah, that was just me. And then that was just me. I mean, there are a lot of things running through my head. Although I had a background in software engineering, but then, I mean, school is different from real life hands-on. And the kind of things I see during real life, they are not what I envisaged while I was learning. So I'm always asking questions that, wait, encryption, I know, I mean, you can ask me questions on encryption and I will tell you how encryption is and the best way to use encryption. But when it comes to hands-on, like, I've never used it before. Let me see what the code looks like. Okay, if you encrypt, how will it disappear and the end user will not see it when they open the browser? Like questions like that. Yeah, they were funny questions. They sounded stupid, but yeah, they were valid questions. And then he was the same person that told me that I think you can use this your art of inquisitiveness to do more than tech support. I think you should try QA. He was the one that introduced me to software testing. And then he was like, I think your mind is more than this tech support. This tech support will kill your curiosity. And that was what really helped me. I would say continuous learning also helped me because then, I mean, we have more book knowledge. And then, but the guys that I work with were more like my peer group. But because they started programming way back in school, I mean, most of them went to Ife, where what you know is where you go, not what you pass in book. You have people who finish with the third class, but yeah, they're already earning way more than somebody who finished with the fourth class. And then at that point, I said, oh, okay. I mean, I need to work with these guys. And then I had to start reading up. I started reading up. I think W3 school was my go-to then. And then a bit of Stack Overflow where I needed to say, oh, if I run a DB query and I'm getting this, why am I getting this of that? Those were my go-to. You want to say something? Did you wanted to say something?
No.
Okay, so those are my go-to then. Okay, those are my go-to then, and that really, really helped me to learn, and then it kind of improved my thinking skills, troubleshooting skills. It improved my confidence because then when I first joined the team, I mean, I'm seeing all the guys, the way they talk. I'm like, where do I even come in? When I have questions to ask, I'll write it down. And I'll send my line manager a message on we have a work today that we use. It wasn't Slack. And I sent a message and I say, sir, what are these questions? And after listening to the question, he would not call. He does it like we have a general weekly meeting. Then he would not wait till the next meeting and say, the last meeting, before we have some certain questions, but I think she was a bit shy to ask. And I was the only lady. Did I say that? Sorry, I was the only lady in a team of about 20 guys. And he would say, when we have a question to ask, she's our lady, please let her just ask the questions. And I'll be like, And I'll be reading and I'll be stunting and I'll be stunting, be like, okay, wait, she has like 7 questions. Let me read them out to you. And then that started building my confidence when they started pushing me forward to say, okay, you don't have to be shy. You don't have to be afraid. Like everybody got here from learning. You might think you're coming late because all of you are like third group, like they're 1 or 2 years older than you, and then you think you're coming late. You're not coming late. There's some people who are even way older than you in the banks, and they think they're working in the engineering team or the tech team, but they don't know what you know. So the confidence to ask questions. I think asking questions, continuous learning, being able to say, oh, everybody has gone home. I mean, I was a lady at that time, and then the only thing I do is sleep at the office, but I would work till 10, 11 p.m. just because I want to use the office internet to read. And because after close of business 6, the internet becomes faster. That's when I start learning. I pick up my juice and I start watching video tutorials and all of that. So I would say continuous learning, the ability to ask questions, and the ability to not feel intimidated when you're in a team. The ability to see everybody in the team as a partner, not as a competitor, not as a rival. We are all in it together. Tips that would have gotten me this further in building a network team. I think one of my phones was I didn't build a network team. I was a bit shy to build a network team. I was a bit shy to go into communities, to join communities, to be outspoken. The confidence that would have gotten me further was me not being able to speak out in the community. Like I still struggle with speaking in a group. I struggle with that. I think it's a natural thing.